About this, he spoke to the HR Generalist manager, who said that my absence probably caused a lot of strain and extra work for Aubrey when Aubrey's not even credentialed to do what I do. Management told me how baffled and upset they were with HR's handling of the situation whenever something came up. My company mentor was also a huge support until she decided to take another job elsewhere. When my doctor extended my aid to work from home accommodation a second time, HR told me my attendance was a concern. I emailed their boss's boss, the HR director, and asked for clarification. He said I hadn't come into the office, so, of course, my attendance was a problem. I reiterated I had medical documentation stating that if WFH wasn't available, then they could refer to the FMLA documentation my medical team also sent. He replied that medical documentation, including both FMLA and ADA reasonable accommodations, doesn't hold much weight with the company. That's when I got a lawyer. As a problem, Aubrey drifted to the background when HR started their medical documentation doesn't matter campaign. On my lawyer's recommendation, I contacted the HR executive team, where this curse situation came to light. And I did check with my lawyer about emailing this update, and they laughed and said I couldn't leave people hanging after all that. I called the chief HR officer, which for my company is going over like 5 people's heads, but I did it with George's and my new boss's blessings, who is the head of HR, and asked why my attendance was an issue when I had reasonable ADA documentation. She had no idea what I was talking about, so I filled her in on all of it, including the mediation meeting and Aubrey's harassment, and the HR director saying medical documentation didn't hold any weight with the company. She was speechless and asked to meet with me and my lawyer as soon as possible. My lawyer hardly had to do anything during the meeting because the CHRO was horrified at everything I told her. I've never seen steam come out of someone's ears, but it would have happened here if it was physically possible. My lawyer didn't need to say a word, but just nodded and smiled when the CHRO offered an extended paid medical leave so I could handle my recovery, and said Aubrey constantly sending me fitness plans would be dealt with swiftly. I didn't hear anything from Aubrey for a long time, but I did hear through some gossip channels that the HR staff involved in the red flag meeting, who threatened to write me up, were let go. Aubrey wasn't fired because they believed she was misled by HR, so I understand that part even if I don't agree with it. But she was on a tight pip for a while. Then she showed up at my house. Now we moved from banana pants to full-on banana ensemble. I'm still on leave and out of the blue. Aubrey showed up at my door on a weekend with 2 other women in tow, and the commenters guessed it. She's in very deep with an MLM. Aubrey came over to demonstrate some workout techniques and give me some diet supplement samples and discuss a career opportunity because she was worried about my physical and professional health. She didn't make it past my mother-in-law, who has been a godsend right now. My mother-in-law made it clear where Aubrey could stick her demonstration, and they left in a hurry. I notified my lawyer and the CHRO and said that Aubrey is now a full-time wellness coach. I'm happy I went with my gut and got a lawyer, because the company has changed so drastically over the last year, with the toxic HR department encouraging behavior like Aubrey's and spreading false information about medical leave and time off. The company is almost unrecognizable. Also, with my boss and mentor both gone, I don't know if I'm going to go back once I'm medically cleared. The company is also undergoing a restructuring right now, and my department may end up being distributed between other parts of the company or even other parts of the state. I have been looking at jobs and drafting resumes for a full-time remote position since it might be a better fit. Final update, I got an offer from a local company that's going fully remote with administration and management meeting up once a month. The salary was right. It's 90% remote. It's a good fit, so I'm happy with it. My role is HR, adjacent to the head of payroll. I reported to the COO and was hired by the CEO and COO. I walked into our first admin meeting and was sitting across from me, but the HR director who told me medical documentation didn't matter and orchestrated my red flag meeting. Let's call him Bob. Bob is the interim HR director for this company. Bob looked very uncomfortable when he saw me. We went through some employee files, including several who are on maternity leave and 2 who were injured on a job site. Bob got quieter as we began reviewing medical documentation and approving paid leave. I smiled and looked him in the eye when asked, "Does Jill have her medical documentation?" "Great. Medical documentation holds a lot of weight. That's important stuff to have." He looked like he wanted to melt into his seat. At one point, he tried to argue against someone using their PTO to provide end-of-life care for a parent when they had ample PTO. I smiled and said, "You're right. Our employee support fund should cover half this time. It's a shame for them to have to lose all their PTO when they're going to need it to heal and grieve over the next few months. Why don't you get me the paperwork for the support fund this afternoon? That's so generous." Everyone was happy and in agreement. He looked like he swallowed a lemon, but everyone said, "Oh my God, Bob, how thoughtful." He had to eat it badly and got me the documentation an hour later. Bob can suck it. Bob is only a contractor, so he'll be moving on soon anyway. Medically, I'm doing better and very happy to move on from where I was. Aubrey's been full on radio silence, which is perfect for me.